Okay.
You got a whole lot going
I don't have a whole two things going on. That's a whole lot.
on.
The two
You on the
things.
phone, you on live, you doing text.
Oh, this is the same thing. I gotta make sure that I am on. Oh, what's you? Oh, there you go. Let me go in there. You see what y'all coming? Hmm. You can be listening right now. Oh, there you go, Miss Lisa right there. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna go ahead and press record. We are on live on all the platforms on Facebook and Periscope and YouTube. All right, so let me go ahead and press record in a second.
Good evening.
All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody to the Swag You, our weekly Swag You empowerment call. It is 22121. 22121. And we have our guest, Miss Gwen, from Make a Dope Life for Dope Life Essentials, also on Instagram. I'm excited to have her. I met her on Clubhouse. And so we connected because her target market is, of course, women over 40, and that's who we are within the Swag U. And I'm just excited to have her come empower us on this evening. So before we begin, as we always, we'll go ahead and begin with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for allowing us to be here. Sorry, I got these people laughing. Y'all got me laughing. Dear Lord, we thank you for today. Thank you for allowing us to be here and see a brand new day, God. We thank you, Lord, for just allowing us to even see this day, because some people have not even seen February. We thank you for our friends and our family that are still here, and we thank you for Ms. Gwen that accepted the invitation to come on and empower us, ladies, within Swag You. God, we ask, Lord, that you continue. God, we ask that you continue to bless her, Lord. Um, these are the blessings we ask in your most high name. We pray. Amen. All right, Miss Gwen, I go ahead and give it over to you. You're muted.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited, but I'm also very nervous, as I told you when I joined. It's been a while since I had to speak before a group, even though technically I talk for a living. But I'm honored that you invited me to be here, and I'm happy to be here. And it's nice to meet everyone that's on the call. So I'm just gonna go with God. Okay.
Yes, go ahead. Look at you looking cute with your hat on.
I love hats, so kind of like this is like my cape. So as you said, I'm Gwendolyn. I'm the owner of Dope Life Essentials. It's a natural soul care brand. Currently, we're offering body care products, but in the next few months, we'll be expanding into home and apparel over the next couple of months. I'm a communications professional, but in my personal time, I do run Make a Dope Life. And Make a Dope Life started as a personal hashtag. Really, I was just chronicling my life after the end of my second marriage. And I decided that I just wanted to really pursue or go after the life that I had always imagined. And so I would always get the question like, well, what does it mean to make a dope life? And so I'm going to go back to the beginning of my story, just so you can kind of understand my perspective, where I came from, the good, the bad, and the glorious, just so you'll just kind of get a feel for where I am. And so if at any point something I share resonates with you, whether positively or negatively, depending on what it is, if you just take a pause or a deep breath and just stay with me, we're going somewhere together. And so I'll check the chat periodically because Theron let me know that this could be interactive. You didn't necessarily just have to listen to me talk. So If there's anything that you want to ask or share, feel free to stop me. That's fine. I was a speech major in college, so I'm pretty comfortable, stopping and going. But my name is Gwendolyn Althea. I'm the daughter of Janice and the granddaughter of Virginia May. I'm named after my godmother and the tennis legend Althea Gibson. My mom's a retired school teacher. She taught me how to live a life of service and character, to be honest and forthright, and to work hard and persevere. And that's an important part. And you'll see as the story goes on why. She gave me her love of reading, and I would spend hours into the night trying to finish a book every day. She was and remains my first superhero. I'm not sure if my biological father is the person that my mom ultimately married and whose name I carried until the time I got married the first time, or the man who sexually assaulted her after a date. I was born in Jersey City, New Jersey, but at around 2 years old, my parents packed up me and my older brother Calvin, and we moved to Los Angeles, California. That was in 1977, excuse me. But in the fall of 2008, 1998, I'm getting all my years confused. I'm nervous. But we left LA and headed back to Jersey City with a brief pit stop in New Orleans. And so by the time I graduated high school, I had attended more than 14 different schools, even more if you count the many college classrooms that I sat in as my mom pursued her degree in education. At an early age, my mom perceived I was a bright student and believed that education was the key to everything. And so whenever she heard of a good school or program, she would just find a way to get me in. So that was why I changed schools so often. She would even get jobs at the private schools I attended to cover the cost. And so I went on to graduate from high school from the top public high school in New Jersey, where I played 3 sports. I sang in the choir. I had a singing group. I took AP classes, performed at talent shows across the city, and I wrote poems and short stories. I would then head off to Baltimore to attend the national treasure, Morgan State University, on a full academic scholarship along with my closest friends. Literally, my high school clique that I hung with, we all went on to Morgan State University, except for one. She went to Howard. I would join campus organizations, I'd make new friends, I'd pledge a sorority, and then I would fall into a deep depression, stop going to class, subsequently lose that scholarship, take out loans to try and finish, but ultimately I dropped out of college, still depressed, and then finding out I was pregnant with just 1 more year's worth of credits needed to graduate. So you can imagine my mother's disappointment and even my own. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be the last time that I broke her heart. But I didn't understand, how did that happen? I was the good child. I was the quiet child. I was the child that nobody needed to worry about. But I was also the child who never felt heard because my brother required so much attention. I often felt forgotten. Like my mom and grandmother, he was visually impaired and as an adult was diagnosed with schizophrenia. So you can imagine trying to raise him as a child was very challenging for my mom. And so she thought, great, Gwen is quiet, she's good, she does all her work, she gets straight A's, not a worry. But she didn't know that I was also the child who had been molested repeatedly throughout my childhood by different people, including family members. I was an extremely shy child that didn't understand why I changed schools so much. I just knew that I was always the new girl who never knew quite how to fit in. And I was always just feeling a little bit awkward and a little bit out of place, that I just wasn't one of the cool kids. And those feelings still arise for me to this day. And so here I am, the depressed college failure, living with my roommate and working part-time in retail. I made the decision to terminate the pregnancy, which took me into an even deeper depression. And in the midst of all that, I met my first husband. And so for the next 7 years, I would live on a roller coaster ride, filled with a level of broke that I had never experienced, even when I was a child and we were on food stamps and medical aid. There was emotional and financial abuse, physical abuse, and ultimately for both of us, a felony conviction with a sentence of 5 years. But God was merciful, and the judge suspended all but 6 months, which I spent at a Baltimore County women's jail, where I would discover that I was again pregnant. And so at this point in the story, I had a whole complete finish of this speech about how my life went and how, we eventually got divorced and I jumped into another marriage like a dummy. Well, let me not say I was a dummy, but I was naive and young and hadn't learned my lesson and immediately went to a second marriage that ultimately ended in divorce. But I was praying about, just to be calm and what to say this evening to make sure I was on the right path. And about around 7, I just kept feeling this push and this pull from God to go in a different direction. And so, as I said, I planned to share how I didn't leave my husband immediately when we were released and how I immediately jumped into a second marriage that also ended. and then talk about all these great steps I took to make this dope, amazing life. But when I was practicing and praying about what I wanted to share, ultimately, he pushed me to talk about how to thrive in spaces where you don't belong, how to have peace while in places that you seemingly do not belong. My mother was born into a family where she just didn't quite fit. She was inquisitive. She liked to ask questions during a time or in a generation where children were seen and not heard. You speak when you're spoken to, or you do not speak at all. And as far as questions, children stay out of grown folks' business and you do not question them. And so this often got my mother in trouble. It just did. And to be honest, my mom is in her 70s. And when she still talks about her childhood, I can feel the pain, like I was there with her. So she's still affected by it. However, it also greatly informed the way that she parented me. And so she gave us space and opportunity. She listened to us in a way that I'm sure a lot of parents at the time did not. So, and while I did what they say, I said I did, and I absolutely earned my charge and punishment. By all accounts of my life and what my mother taught me and how I was raised and knew how to act, it just seemed like I didn't belong in jail. Like this wasn't where I was supposed to go. I wasn't supposed to be there. The judge knew it. He gave us multiple chances to try to pay back this money so he wouldn't have to sentence us. But we were kids. We didn't have any way to pay that back, no matter what the amount was. When I was taken into custody for the last time from the courtroom, the intake counselor at the prison knew it. She told me that I was a rarity, one, in that my crime was not drug related. Almost all the women in there were drug related, whether it was theft or something else. The motivator behind it was drug addiction, and that I had never used drugs. The next morning, she had me removed from the general population unit on the top floor and moved into a unit with about 10 to 12 women. It was B7, I'll never forget, B7. The inmates knew that I was different. I spoke too well. I didn't have needle or track marks. I didn't make up stories to get the doctor to prescribe me some kind of drug that would have me sleep 12 hours of the day. One of the young women that was in there with me, she was discharged, released before I was, and she wrote me a letter when she got home. And she let me know that while she was there, she actually thought I was a narc. She was in there because her boyfriend was a big time city drug dealer, and she got caught up in a sweep. And as they locked up his family, his friends, all of his associates to try to get evidence against him, she thought that I was planted in the jail to befriend her and get information. And of course, she realized that I was still there after she left, that I was really just Gwen who did some stupid stuff and now was paying the price. So while again, seemingly I didn't belong there, ultimately I had to realize I had a purpose there. I learned a lot in a very short time. Like I said, all except one woman who was in B7 with me had been introduced to drugs and crime by men. All of them except one. I learned what detox looks like up close and personal. I had seen it on TV, acted out in movies and on TV shows, but to be in a space with a woman who had to detox with no assistance and no drugs, it's an experience I will never forget. And so I learned to see the humanity in people in their lowest moments. And then I learned that God was everywhere. They tell you that when you're a kid. I learned it, that he was omnipotent and all-knowing and all of those things that we're taught. But in B7 was where I really came to know that this was true and real, and that my strength and my peace were there too. And so at 40 plus, our lives are supposed to be good. We're supposed to be at a certain level of success. We're supposed to have it all together, all of it, just right. Because we have age, we're wise, right? We're smart. Everything's out. Was there a question? I'm sorry. Okay. So, we're supposed to have it all together, but then something happens. It could be a moment, big or small, an event, a life change, a loss. And then we're saying to ourselves, I'm not supposed to be here. Wherever here is, it could be in the wrong job or someplace you're not happy, in a relationship. And for me, relationship doesn't just mean a romantic relationship. Sometimes our friendships aren't where we want them to be. Relationships with our coworkers or our children, just wherever here is for you, you're thinking, this isn't supposed to be this way. I'm not supposed to be here. How in the world did I get here? And how do I get out of here? Now, 20 plus years ago, my sentence was fixed. So I knew exactly when I would physically be leaving B7. I knew when I was leaving the Towson Women's Correctional Facility or whatever it was called. But I didn't know where I was going to live, how I would find a job, or if anyone would hire me, and how I was going to take care of this life that was growing inside me. So I'm sitting there like, oh my God, how did I get here? And, what do I do now? What I didn't know that my ultimate lesson was about finding peace in all situations. And so how do you do that when you are 24, you ain't finished school, your mama lives in New Jersey, you don't got no family in Baltimore, your friends have graduated and gone on to live their best life, you ain't got no degree, you ain't got no money, and you're married to somebody who likes to educate. So I had to embrace and think about the reality of my situation. Accepted where I was, not to the accountability for it. My mama ain't raised me like that. I knew better. So there was a reason why I was making the decisions that I was making. And so I had to figure out how to get a hold of that. I still had a lot of work to do for years after that. But in that moment, I had to assess the situation and triage what was happening to me. And so first I had to stop asking myself the how and started asking myself why and what. Okay, God, I'm here. Why am I here? And what's the purpose for me being here? Then I had to evaluate where I was in the situation. I had to stop playing the Gwen, you really messed up story so I could focus on what I needed to do in the present. And I had to learn the rules of where I was so then I could learn how to make things work in my favor. So one of the things where I was in B7, you did not leave your cell area. So in it, there were 4 cells and then an open area that also had bunk beds and then the area where you ate in your own TV. And on the opposite of us was B6. They were on the same side. The only time you left was once a week when they would inspect the cells to make sure that there was nothing, no contraband in there, and you would change your uniform. You would get a new uniform for the week. So you wore the same thing every day for a week. The only way that you would get out is if you signed up for programs that would get you out of your cell. So I learned that really quickly. And so I signed up for a program that would get me out of the place once a week. And the kind woman who came in from social service, she would bring us food. So once a week, that meant I got real food. I mean, she brought in Pizza Hut or salads or just things that were different from typical prison food, which we don't need to talk about. Jail food. I don't even want to say prison. It was a jail. I learned how that I could go to the library. I was an avid reader as a child, and books saved my sanity in there. And so wherever you are, I've been in jobs I didn't like, and I had to stop and pause and say, what do I need to do here? Sometimes it was an assessment of what's the issue here? Is it me? Is it my performance? Is it a relationship? What can I do to calm it until I'm getting into a new situation? Do I need to brush up my resume and start looking for a way for my escape route? But you learn the rules of wherever you are, figure them out, and then start to look at how to make them work in your favor while you're there. Because you may not be able to get out immediately, but there are usually things you can do to help mitigate what's going on. And so then I had to create a plan of how to survive. I just want to pause and say, when I say survive, again, I was in jail and it was not pleasant, but I don't want you to get this image of like Oz or Orange is the New Black. It wasn't that terrible. I didn't fear for my safety. So when I say I was determined not to die there, I'm speaking about mentally and emotionally. I was just determined not to crack completely, not to dissolve, not to trying to think of how to stay peaceful and calm, because I didn't want that stress to impact the life that was growing in me. I didn't tell the jail that I realized I was pregnant because that would send me to the medical ward. And I knew in the medical ward, there were a lot of sick people. Half of them were sick and the other half were also detoxing. And I thought that my health and safety was better where I was. So I didn't tell anyone except a couple of people in the unit with me, and they kept my secret. The next thing I did was I was forced to actually let my village in. I would always tell myself, like a lot of us, I'm alone, but that wasn't really true. I actually had an army of people who loved me and were prepared to activate on my behalf whenever I called, but I never called. Whether I felt embarrassed, I felt alone, or it's just the isolation. For whatever my reason was, I was not known to reach out for help. And so that time in Towson forced my hand. I couldn't run away from anything or anyone. And what would happen was people would begin to show up to visit me. To this day, I don't know how they knew where I was, how the word spread, when it's here. I would get letters. My aunt had to drive my mom down from New Jersey, which I was immensely happy to see my mother, but I was also brokenhearted that my mother had to leave her home, drive for hours to come visit her baby girl. But she did, and I'm thankful for that. But what I've learned over the years is that you have to invest in your peace just as much as God is invested in your peace. And He is divinely invested in your peace of mind, your peace of spirit, the peace that surrounds you, the peace that's in your circle. That is what He wants and desires for us. And I didn't realize how much He was invested in my peace until after my son was born. So while I was there, I was able to get a Bible. I can't remember if my pastor bought it or there was one in the library. I don't remember. But he kept taking me to read about King Solomon. I'm like, why? It took a little while before I realized I am absolutely carrying a boy. And he absolutely directed me to name him Solomon. Most people think Solomon means rich because all the stories that they tell about Solomon and his wealth and all of that. But when I did research, Solomon actually means peace. And so, but again, I didn't know that for a couple of years. And so what I came to understand is that every time I called my child to me, he was sending me peace. And if you ever meet my son or interact with my son, you know that he can calm a room just by coming in. He could come into the chaos of his family situation and, you know, like his grandparents, anybody, and it would shift everything just by peace entering the room. He did that through Solomon. That was how much he loved him, knowing what he would need, and also answering my need, knowing what I would need. And of course, I should have run home to my mama when I got out, but I was thinking, you know, she's older, she's retired, she doesn't have any money, I'm going to be a burden. Maybe I can make this work. And so it didn't. And I was forever thankful to make it out with my life. Now, that was a dangerous situation, but I made it out. And I made it out of the second marriage. It wasn't abusive, but it still was not right for me. And so 6 years ago, this month, February 2015, a few months from my 40th birthday, I was crying in my therapist's office every week. Had been crying in there every week from late November or December when my husband at the time first said we should just be friends. 4 months, just crying every week, just going there and just boo, trying to figure out my past and what lie ahead. But as cliche as it sounds, one day it just hit me that whatever my life was going to be was absolutely and completely up to me. And if my life was going to be as dope as I imagined it to be, then I had to make it that way. And that's actually how Make a Dope Life hashtag was born, because that's all it was. It was just me sharing pictures like everybody does on Instagram, and that would be the hashtag. But I realized it was a thing for a lot of people because after about a year or so, I would run into people at homecoming or in the grocery store or whatever, and they would stop me to talk about this hashtag. What does it mean? What are you doing? Or I want to make a dope life too. You've inspired me to do X, Y, and Z. You're always trying new things. I cook, so the other hashtag is make a dope dish. So people always ask me, when are you gonna bring me some food to homecoming? I'm not, but I enjoyed it. So I had to turn my focus onto the thing I could control. I can control me. I can't change anyone else. I can change me. Sometimes that means moving to another situation. Then that situation might be just being by yourself. It absolutely means doing things for you. So in the last 6 years, I've had a lot of great and amazing things happen professionally, economically. All of those things are great, but those weren't even the dopest parts of all of this. It's just that I found peace. I found my strength, and I found my resilience, and I found my voice, and I became determined to use it. It's so interesting that I went on to college to be a speech major. Surprised everybody, because in high school, I almost failed senior English because we had to do soliloquies, Shakespeare, and I could not do it in front of the class. I had stage fright about standing up by myself. In a singing group, cool. A dance group, cool. We would serenade people at that, cool. Me by myself, just me, I could not do it. I stood in front of the class, almost the entire class shaking. I even had a classmate try to come and stand with me. Ultimately, the teacher granted me the option to come to her office and do the soliloquy. And I still was terrified, but I got through it. So the idea that I would go on to college and be a speech major and then go into a job where I had to interact with media and be on camera and talk to people, was amazing. People would have conversations with me and I would have to repeat myself because my voice would be so quiet. They would be like, what? Huh? It would drive my mother crazy because she speaks loud and boisterously. And here I am, I've discovered my voice and can not only speak for work, but in other situations, even when though I'm still shy, even though I'm still nervous, I've just decided that if this is something that I want to do, well, I'm just going to figure out how to do it. Sometimes you're afraid, but you do it anyway. And even that brings me a certain level of peace that I can overcome something that used to be a major roadblock for me. And so part of this journey will be granting yourself permission to just be only uniquely who you are, not who anybody else is, not what our parents thought we should be, not what the world says you should be. You just have to accept being whoever you are uniquely. I am normally the chick in a hat with blue lipstick and hoops, or red lipstick and hoops, whatever that may be. I love yellow. I love color. You know, you also give yourself permission to dream openly and freely without limits or judgment. It's your dream. You are free to have it, and you don't need permission from anybody else. It's the permission to connect with your sisters. As I said, I have great, wonderful women friends. I don't have any phobias or fears about women can't get along. That's not been my experience. But at the same time, again, I'm shy. Sometimes I feel a little awkward. And so I can retreat sometimes. I'll fall back when really, I don't know about you, but something magical happens when we all get together. There is just this, I can't even describe it, but I think Beverly Bond had the right mind when she said Black girl magic and Black girls rock. That is just all it is. There's something magical when women get together. And then the hardest, most challenging part is just committing to showing up for yourself as much as you do for others. We sacrifice so much by nature and nurture. We're taught everything comes first, even though in nature, you have to take care of yourself to be able to be strong enough to give to other people. But women are taught the opposite. And so it's very hard to bump up against that and suddenly pivot and think about yourself, to give yourself so much more than you give other people so that you have the strength to take care of them and enough left over for yourself as well. Or not even, I don't even like the term leftover for yourself. You have an overflow to share and give to other people. And so, like I said, my journey was a discovery and pursuit of what brings me unimaginable joy and peace. I don't allow, or I try not to allow anything to interfere with my peace. My peace is non-negotiable. And the first rule for that is love your life, not theirs. And I had to learn to love my life, good, bad, indifferent. And since I was, this will be my last story and I'll let you guys go, or if you want to ask me anything. But when I was about 8, 9, or 10, somewhere in there, I know because we were still living in California, so I was young. I used to have this recurring vision of me on a stage. And as time would go, it would open up a little bit more. I knew I was on the stage. I knew I was in the auditorium. And then I could tell it was in a large space. And then I could tell it was all women. And I was wearing like a red suit or something like that. And I continued to have it. And in 2015, I was in a session with a coach and she was talking to me. And at the same time, I started to hear from the Lord. And he clearly said to me, to get to the vision I showed you as a child, you're going to have to share everything in between, your entirety of your story. And I remember thinking, I don't want to say all that. That story I told y'all about B7, first of all, y'all are the first people to hear all of that. I mostly do not talk about that because it is single-handedly probably one of the most embarrassing things I have ever done. I felt like I let my family down, my college down, anybody that ever touched me, that it was such a huge disappointment and a huge weight. But I had to get comfortable and embrace that the Gwendolyn that my mom loves, that my son Solomon loves, that all my friends love, that's me too. And God loves me as I am, as I am. And so I had to learn to do that as well. And just kind of change my narrative and asking, what is the purpose? What did I learn from that? What can I get from that? And then how do I share it with other people? And so I don't want to, drag on the time. Like I said, this is a totally different speech or talk that I planned this week, all the way throughout the day up until, about maybe 30 minutes or so before I got on. So hopefully I heard God right. And what I'm sharing has blessed somebody or helped someone. And so I'm curious to hear feedback, or if anybody has some questions or anything that they want to share. I'm definitely open. And I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Ron.
I'm sorry, I'm back out. Thank you, Miss Gwen.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Do you have any questions or comments for Miss Gwen? Let me see. Let me check on the I've been checking on the Facebook page. Any questions or concerns from Miss Gwen? Ms.
Okay.
Gwen, I just want to thank you. Can you let everybody know where they can find you on Instagram?
Yes, you can find me at Make a Dope Life, spelled straight out MakeADoplife.
And what about your no, we cannot hear you, Miss
No.
Katie.
I see your mic is on, but no, I can't hear you.
No, we can't hear you.
You want to type your question?
Well, let me see if I can mute you and then unmute you. Are you talking now, Miss Katie?
What about now?
Mhm.
Yes, yeah, we can hear you now.
Me and technology are not friends.
That's okay.
Right.
But Miss Gwen, I think your story is absolutely amazing. So I was taking a lot of notes. And when you were talking about assessing the situations when you're in places you don't believe you belong, is what I understood you to say. That
Mhm.
I always get uncomfortable in new places, and so sometimes it's hard to, because you're always about you or how they are looking at you while you're in there. Yeah, I can see y'all still having trouble hearing me because y'all like leaning up real
Oh no,
far.
we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I really like that. Is it me, doing that self evaluation about, what's really going on with this situation? Because I used to be one of those people where um, I will overthink it a lot,
Mhm.
and then I would end up doing worse than I probably should have been. But when you just show up and be you, like you said, to give yourself permission to be only uniquely who you are, then that just like is such that for me gives me peace. When you just let it all go and let it all out and don't worry about other people. But it was awesome. I'm already following you on Instagram, so
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's funny because the original talk was called like Radical Authenticity. And I was going through and I was writing and I was practicing out loud. And then every time I got to that point, I could just feel like that push, like, no, stay right here with this story. And I'm like, I don't want to fully tell that story yet. But I was like, okay. So I just went with it. So I'm glad that it was helpful. But yes, I write in my job now. I actually have been in this job a year. So I started right before the pandemic for 30 calendar days, and then we got sent home and been home ever since. But one of my team members, she has like work hurt. I guess we used to use the word church hurt, but she has work hurt. And so she'll get stuck. Like if something happens, she gets like really antsy. And I just had to start talking to her like, look, you can't control them people. None of them. And there are things that aren't going to change. Like certain people, they're not leaving the job, whether it's by relationship or anything else. So you can't control that. So what can we look at that can help the situation for you? First of all, she's been there 2 years. So anybody that works for me, I encourage everybody to at least start putting their feelers out and looking out, because she's younger. So there's no reason This is not the generation of you have to work at the same job for 50 years and get a gold watch at the end. You can experience different things, but focus on the things that you can control while you're here. And the things you can't control, I can't spend hours like I used to do it. So I know it will drive you insane. And that was one of my biggest lessons for 2015 was learning how to redirect my thoughts, because I could sit there for 8 hours straight thinking about what happened with this marriage. And he said that, and why did that? And then I would have to stop myself. Stop thinking about that, think of something else. That would last like 10 minutes, maybe. But over time, I could do it for longer periods of time until I had disciplined myself to focus on me and what I could be doing. And I could have been doing so many other things for 8 hours than sitting there pondering why, oh my God, why me? So, the power to just be ourselves in a space, it's a power, because we're not taught that, especially as women. We have this intuition, and when we follow it, everything goes well. But we're taught, well, why do you think that way? Why are you doing that way? Don't go that way. We're almost taught like to do the opposite of what God put in us naturally. And so it's like relearning this thing that he already put in us.
So I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say thank you for sharing. That was a very powerful story. So just thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you. I love the headwrap you got on in this picture too.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you, Ms. Gwen, again for coming on. One of your things, you said you went to school, you went to 14 different schools.
Yeah, my mom was not playing. If she got a wind of anything that she thought was going to be better, she was going to go over there to find it. And like I said, as a kid, I didn't understand. I just knew I was changing schools. When I got older and I talked to her, like maybe like high school, I understood. But what really made me, we all think our moms are superheroes, but what really made me, I didn't know that her vision was as bad as it was. I actually learned that she was legally blind because I overheard her say it to somebody else when I was like 21 or 22. So I knew she had vision problems. She had like cataract surgery, but I had no idea that her vision was that bad. And so to navigate all that she did for me while managing a son who, again, and those times, mental health, all those things, like she would tell me, she was like, she had been going to all these different places to try to figure out what was going on with my older brother, how much time she didn't drive. So you were talking about doing this on public transportation in Los Angeles. And if you've ever been there, there's no walk to the corner. It's a good on long distance, and you're taking buses all across the city. For her to navigate all of that in the 80s with really no assistance and no roadmap, and then to be able to get me around these places, she had no roadmap. She made sure that we read so that we knew that there was life beyond where we were. If there was a museum, we were at it. If there was a program, I was in it. Girl Scouts, choir, junior usher, she knew, like, I can't let this one fall through the cracks. So, like I said, I felt unheard, but it wasn't because she was trying not to hear me or I was in an abusive situation. It was just a lot going on for this single mother who had her own handicap. And so, yeah, she's fabulous. Taught me everything I know about the Lord too. She just everything.
That's good. I want to thank Miss Gwen again for coming on, and everybody that's here and also that's listening to the recording, as well as on Facebook. This is, we got one more Sunday. This is the last Sunday. No, we got one more Sunday. Next Sunday we have Miss Chavette will be our guest speaker. But also don't forget, if you have not registered for the State of Womanhood Address, which is March the 8th through the 12th, with climaxing on the 13th. Go ahead and register. We got some great keynote speakers Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of that week, because March is Women's HerStory, not history, HerStory month. Okay. And so we're doing that, and we're having some giveaways. You got to be registered in order to get the giveaways that will be given away for that week. We're doing like one giveaway or two giveaways depending on what comes in for that week. So again, guys, thank you so much for coming in. Don't forget to tune into Miss Katie and Miss Lisa's. She's on it's every day, right, Miss Katie? Because y'all doing Miss Lisa's book.
Yes, Monday through Friday from 3 to 4. Sometimes we go over a little bit over 4, depending on what we're talking about. But it's from her book, teaching on her book, "What's Cramping Your Lifestyle." And tomorrow's gonna be day 11, and we are gonna be on chapter 8 tomorrow. I can, I had it open.
As long as I got the recording, I can go back with when I get my books. I can go back and
Talking about living on
You
purpose
didn't get your book
tomorrow.
yet, Sarah? You didn't get your book yet?
Well, you know what? Let me check. I ain't checked the mail today for
It should
yesterday.
have been Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. Okay.
Mhm.
Then I'll check. I'm not at home, then I'll check it when I get to the house.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're on the God's Promises Are For Me Facebook page.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So we'll see you on next Sunday, same time.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Hey, Shanita.
Yeah, hey, Shanita.
Not you.
Hey,